Good evening, everyone. We continue in a study in the book of Zechariah. We continue with verse 7, which we have left off verse 6 yesterday. The first part from verses 1 to 6 is one revelation, prophetic revelation to Zechariah, uh, reminding them to turn back to God, come back to God, and God is coming back to them. Now, in verse 7, we see this on the at the same time. This is also very much in the same 11th month, same year. You would find that this is on the 24th day of the 11th month in the second year of Darius. The word of God, the davar of God, that would be the another matter, another issue, came to Zechariah, the prophet, and we are discussing what he is telling us. He is called the prophet because he receives prophetic revelation. He is known as the son of Berechiah, the son of Edo. Now, as we have touched on yesterday, this is the father, and this is the grandfather. Again, I mentioned Edo is known as a seer, and in his time he has prophetic insight, but it's not recorded in anywhere that we have today. But Edo is mentioned again in verse 7 because he is a popular or very famous person in the history of Israel. Now, from the 8th month to the 11th month, we have a revelation again, and this time round, it is a very special revelation. And let me just say up front, the book of Zechariah deals with prophetic utterances. And by far, there are more prophetic utterances in the book of Zechariah than in all the other prophet books, in the sense of the lesser prophets, the shorter prophet books. In this particular book itself, the book of Zechariah, we will find that many of these future prophetic revelation is not readily understood, even at the time it was spoken, and and many people think that it is not ready to be revealed even at our present time. And perhaps they suggest that when the time draws near, when events actually happen according to how the prophetic utterances are revealed, then perhaps they would understand it more. So I would leave this with you, food for thought, because not everything that is discussed in a prophetic utterance can be readily and immediately understood. And so we begin with verse 8. This is also the beginning of the word, the davar of God, that supernaturally came to Zechariah in probably a vision in the night. And so he says, I saw at night. And this tells us a vision. Now, understand that this kind of vision is not just a dream that you regularly have. I had mentioned this in the past, that it is a very interactive dream. It is a form of dream where the person dreaming, and in this case, Zachariah, is very clear and alert and attentive and can remember, and he can converse in that dream. It means that he is taken into a level of a dream where it is not normal, and we call it a supernatural communication. In that dream he saw at night, and always at night, just like Daniel at night in Daniel chapter 2, it says, Behold, this word is look. he sees a man riding on a red horse, and he, the same man, was standing among the myrtle trees which were in the ravine. Now, this idea of a ravine actually tells us is in a pool of water. This is not a ravine as in a trench, but in a pool. A pool of deep water. Now, there were a few horses there, and the horses were red, sorrel, and white. Now, first of all, this is a vision. As a vision, he sees, and there is a man. So he describes this as a man, ish. And so he appears in a male gender form. Is he a man or is he an angel? This would be ish. This would be malak. And we will then eventually try to unravel. He is on a horse. This idea here is that he is mounted. The picture we are given is that in as a horse, he is on it. And that is the picture we are having, mounted. And the English translate it as riding. So it is both, right? He is on it, but it's not moving as in riding or trotting around, but you can use the word riding or mounting on a red horse. And there were three horses, red, sorrel, and white. We'll get back to this. But we are told that he is standing among the myrtle trees. And so we have trees, and they are called myrtle trees. Now, the myrtle trees apparently have flowers. Myrtle trees actually give out a fragrance. And then this was in a pool of deep water. So this is a vision. And so deep water. So this is a vision, and there were three other horses. So I just put this at the back: red, sorrel, and white. So one, two, three: red, sorrel, and white. Understand that what I'm trying to explain now is actually the vision. He is seeing, and that is what he is seeing: a man on a red horse among the myrtle trees and in the pool of deep water. And behind there were three horses, red, and this is the color red, then white. So we know the color red and white, but we have a problem with the word sorrel. Now, the idea of sorrel is relatively unknown, and it's suggested that it's something between red and white. That is the suggestion. And so we would, and some people do think that it could be something that is brighter red, So, not understanding this to be a particular color, but it could be reddish white. So in between, so we get a spectrum of colors of three horses. That's the picture that we are getting right now. And now Zechariah begins in this vision. Remember, I said, even in a dream, he is able to converse and interact in the dream. So it is not a normal dream, it is a supernatural communication in a divine sense. And so, and then after seeing that, he says, "What are these, my Lord?" And this word is Adoni. Now, there is I think we should just bear in mind an observation. This word is Adoni. Adoni is my Lord. Adonai is also my Lord. But Adonai is generally used for God. Adoni is normally used for not God, right? Not God. It could be man, it could be angels. So it says, my Lord, what are these? And so the angel who was speaking with me said to me, now, remember I said that just now it was described as man, right? It was described as man, and that's Ish. Right here. And then we are now saying that this is an angel. So we're talking about the same person. And so Zechariah is actually speaking to this one here. So what's happening? What are all these that I'm seeing? And says, I will show you what these are. Verse 10. And the man who was standing among the myrtle trees responded and said, these are the ones whom the Lord has sent to patrol the earth. Now, one of the challenges that we see is that now we have the interpolation of man and angel. And that led some people to think that, well, there could be one here, or there could be another whom he is speaking to. Could there be two persons, or is that one and the same? So, in the way that the Hebrew is structured, it is not absolutely clear, but it is generally understood that the angel is the man. He was among the myrtle trees and says, these are the ones whom God Himself, in verse 10, has sent to patrol the earth. Now, this word patrol the earth literally means to walk about. And this word earth, I think we need to appreciate this. It means land. It is not so much as the third rock from the sun, but very much to say that these 1, 2, and 3 have gone round the land, and they've gone round to inspect everything that's happening in the land. And so to observe and to report back. This is what is happening, at least up to verse 10, how it is viewed. In verse 11, we are told that after they have gone round, and then these are all narratives, after they have gone round, they came to report. So they responded to the angel of the Lord, who was standing among the myrtle trees. So the question would be, are they the same, or are they different? Now, also understand that this phrase here angel of the Lord is actually Malak, Jehovah. And so let me just briefly describe, since we're in this topic, the idea of angel, Malak. Malak comes from the root word halak, which means to walk. And so Malak means one who walks for another. And so Malak literally means somebody who walks on behalf of God. Malak, Jehovah, would be translated as the angel of the Lord, but more in detail, more concretely, the angel is one who walks for God, who goes on behalf of God, who speaks on behalf of God. And so Malak is commonly translated as messenger, because the messenger brings the message of the master. And that would be how the angel of the Lord is understood. And so this would be Malak as angel. And then they said, we have gone back and forth over the land. So walk about the land. And we saw, behold, all the land is still and quiet. All the land is still and quiet. We need to break this down. The idea of still uh, literally means sitting still. Sitting still. And the second word here is at rest. Sitting still and at rest. And there is a message here, because the contrast is this: they have gone round, they have observed, and they came to report. He says, you know what? Everywhere else is sitting still. They're not doing much. They're not fighting. They are at rest. So they are at peace. But what does this imply is this: but Israel is in ruins. And so the picture that we appear to get is this: the myrtle tree most likely represents Israel. The deep waters that surrounds it shows that it is in ruins. But the rest of the land, as these horses went round and patrolled, they came back and said, well, everywhere else is great. And that is the picture given in verse 11. And verse 12 continues. And then, because of that report, the angel of Malach Jehovah said to God. Now, again, I want to point out to you, it says Jehovah Tzevaot. This is the Lord of hosts. This is the Lord of the legions. What does that mean? Means that this is representative of 12 tribes. God is the God of 12 tribes. It says, how long will you take no pity on Jerusalem, the cities of Judah, which you have been indignant for these 70 years? And so this is a very interesting expression in verse 12. It says, why have you no pity, no compassion? This is from the word Nacham, no mercy on Jerusalem. Because Jerusalem, so you can see here, Jerusalem is in ruins. The cities of Judah has been in ruins. And then he says, you have been indignant. What is indignant? Indignant literally means to be enraged. You have been angry at them for 70 years. Now, 70 years have passed, and you said that they will return. And so they have returned. And so if you look at the book of Haggai in chapter 2, they begin to rebuild and lay the foundations of the temple. Now, in parallel, Zechariah is getting a vision that describes the disturbing vision or picture in his mind that, well, everywhere else is at peace, but Jerusalem is in ruins. And so the angel of the Lord requests God to ask when is he going to have pity or have mercy or have compassion and stop being angry at Israel, because 70 years is up. In verse 13, and this would be and then, after the question from the angel of the Lord, the Malach Yehovah, then God responded to this angel who was speaking with me. And so we always see that, well, there was an angel and it appears to be separate from the angel that was on the red horse. But actually, as we go through the chapter, they are one and the same, including the fact that he is the Malach Yehovah. And so the Lord responded to the angel who was speaking with me, and he had good words. Now, this word, gracious words. Gracious words means good words. And always good in the eyes of God. In the eyes of God. And they were comforting words. They were consoling words. They were pitiful words. They were merciful words. They were consoling words. It's from the word nacham. And so what is said in verse 13, we were not told in detail. In fact, what happens is Zechariah probably heard it, but never recorded it for us. That's verse 13. But what he did was he gave us the gist in verse 14 onwards. Verse 14 onwards says this. And then, this word so is and then, the angel or the angel of the Lord who was speaking with me said this. He says, proclaim, cry out, right? Cry out. What else he says? Proclaim, cry out. You could use other words like call out. Call out these words. This is what Jehovah Zevaot says. Now, the good words were not recorded, but the gist of the good words were recorded right here. It says, I am exceedingly jealous for Jerusalem and Zion. So let's decipher this. The idea here is I am exceedingly jealous is a good word because the idea here is that I think we can say the idea here is given to us as a sense of positive jealousy. The sense of positive jealousy. So let me just write this down because we have a missing word again. So I am becoming zealous. Becoming zealous. Becoming jealous. And then there is a word at the back here that is missing. And it says here, a great jealousy. Right? A great jealousy or a great zeal. Now, these words are missing. The translator was trying to put it into this exceedingly jealous. But the translation is missing the point. Now, the idea of jealous is kana. Where have we seen this before? We have seen the word kana in Exodus chapter 20, the giving of the Ten Commandments. And God says, I am a jealous God. You shall have no other gods before me. And the idea of kana gives us a picture of of I guess you can say uh the picture will be a parent bird goes around building nests to raise their chicks, and they would guard their chicks well and protect the chicks with jealousy. So the idea here is to protect and to guard Israel with jealousy in a positive sense, that God will defend Israel, God will protect Israel, God will make sure Israel will be taken care of. And so that's what God is saying. I am kana. I am very jealous for Jerusalem and Zion. Jerusalem and Zion are both an A and a B, talking about the same place. Uh, in a nuance, there is one side that is Jerusalem. Just next to it would be Zion. It's part and parcel of the complex of little mounds. And so God is saying, Jerusalem and Zion both belongs to God. And God is very protective of Jerusalem. God is becoming zealous to protect and restore Jerusalem with a great zeal. With a great zeal. And then in verse 15 gives us another picture. God moves the view from Jerusalem to the nations. He says, but I am very angry. It's a very important term. I am very angry. Right here. With the nations. Right? The anger of God is a great anger. And God says, I am very angry with the nations that are at ease. That's why it says, who are carefree, at ease. Where did we find this? We find that these three horsemen went round and came back and said, oh, everywhere else is at peace. They are still, they are in tranquility. And so God says, I am very angry with the nations. And why am I angry with the nations? Because they don't care. Because when I was a little angry, they furthered the disaster. What does that mean? Now, understand the word disaster is Ra, it is evil. So we always go back to 2 Samuel chapter 7. In the Davidic covenant, God told David that when his children uh, becomes evil, God will punish them by the hands of men. And in this case, we would have the Babylonians, right? The Assyrians, and then the Babylonians. And God is saying, when I allowed you to teach my nation, I was only a little angry. But when I let you teach the nations, you went beyond what God had expected. You brought in the disaster beyond what God allowed. And so God says, I am very angry with you all. You have not only dispersed my nation to all over the world that we cannot recognize, you actually destroyed the temple, you destroyed the land, and you plundered the nation. And so God says, I am very angry with you all. So God is looking at them, the nations of Assyria and Babylonia, and they are now at peace. They are carefree. They're not doing much. But yet Israel, or Judah in this case, is in Babylon, trying to come back to the land, trying to rebuild the temple, trying to rebuild the city. It's all in ruins. And God says, I'm very angry with them. And so they need to know that God used them, but they have crossed the line with God. We have two more verses for today, which is verses 16 and 17. And we will continue in the English Bible, verse 18, but in the Hebrew Bible, it will be chapter 2. Verse 16 says this, therefore, as a result, this is the consequence. The Lord says this, I will return to Jerusalem with compassion. Now, this is a little problematic because this word here is not I will return. It literally says I have returned. This this word here is actually shafti. You can see this word in Psalms 23, verse 6. We read in Psalm 23, verse 6, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord. It's not correctly translated. It should read, I have returned, right? I have returned. So this word is, I have returned to Jerusalem with consolation, with nacham. And then he says, my house, that's God's house, will be built in it. And so we know the foundation has been laid. And this would be the second temple. And God is describing to Zechariah, declares the Lord of hosts. And a measuring line will be stretched over Jerusalem. This is a picture, an image of reconstruction. And so we have the temple and we have the city. Both will be restored. Now, this in itself is somewhat prophetic at that point in time, that God will build the house. Now, in this case, this word will be. will be built is actually a passive. God is going to be there and the people will build it. That's what it means. God is not doing the building. The house is not doing the building. The house will be built by the people who goes back. The measuring line is an architectural description of measuring distance and length. And we stretch all over Jerusalem and gives us a picture of reconstruction. Finally, in verse 17, he says, again tells us that after verse 16, sometime after verse 16, we don't know when, but this word again gives us a picture of future. That is where we come to sort out the Hebrew. That verse 17 is not a continuation of verse 16, because the picture here will be Jerusalem will be rebuilt, the second temple will be there. But in verse 17, it says, way down in the future, this is what the Lord of hosts will say: my cities will again overflow with prosperity. This idea talks about an image of Israel prosperous. And this would be an idea of prosperity of the future. Now, the idea here is of prosperous or prosperity. You'll be surprised that this word is good, tov. So prosperous is in the eyes of God, also in the eyes of the people, that they will develop and they will grow and they will expand, and hence the word prosperous is used instead of the word good. The second part is this: the Lord will again, right? These words again talks about something in the future. And he will comfort Zion. He will console Zion, and again choose Jerusalem. And so we have the A and the B of the two cities talking about the same thing. But the final word I want to share with you would be this word here: and again, right? And again. One is comfort, and again choose. Now, this word choose is a very important word to examine, and to decide. And so God had chosen Jerusalem and had told David that he wants to build his house in Jerusalem, and Solomon built it and was in Jerusalem. The nations that God used to punish Israel went beyond and destroyed the temple. And God says, I will bring comfort again to Zion, and I will choose Jerusalem once again. This particular image of choosing Jerusalem again speaks of a future where Jerusalem will once again have all the temple sacrifices. Because the choice of God of Jerusalem is really to tell them that is where his presence will be. Right now, in Zechariah chapter 1, God says, I have returned. In verse 17, I will choose, right? I will choose Jerusalem again. That's in the future. So understand that verse 16 and 17 is separate. There are two different things. And so it appears to us now that we're looking back that for some reason there seems to be a suggestion that in the future Jerusalem will have to have a temple. Now, from our perspective today, uh, this is not speaking about the second temple which they are building. It is speaking about a subsequent event where the temple will be. Now, it wasn't that clear in the time of Zechariah. And even in our time today, when we look at the book of Zechariah, this seems to give us the hint of the future. But of course, today we have a better appreciation. That's hindsight. That when God chooses Jerusalem again, this would be hinting along the lines of Ezekiel chapter 40 to 48. So, as far as we're concerned, this is how the Jewish commentators would look at it. And this is how verse 16 and 17 are divided into two sections. And this is how one is the present now at that time of Zechariah, one is the future from Zechariah. And with this, we come to the end of our session today.